Welcome to Fringe Element here on the 440 Sports Network. My name is Braden Gall, and you can follow me on Twitter at Braden Gall.
Can someone please turn Braden down in my headphones? Holy shit.
Welcome to Fringe Element here on the 440 Sports Network. My name is Braden Gall, and you can follow me on Twitter at Braden Gall.
Mine's Erin Dugan. You can follow me on Twitter at the Erin Dugan or Instagram, Erin_Dugan.
We have a great show planned for you today. A heat check for all second-year coaches in the SEC, and we will be joined by one of those coaches. Shane Beamer, the South Carolina head football coach, will join us today. But I suppose for those of you watching the product on the YouTubes, click the buttons and share and do all that great stuff as we normally ask you to.
Yep.
We are sitting in the same room today in a very special place. Erin, tell everybody about where we are right now.
We're not sitting in the same room as we've ever been in.
No. I mean, I've been in this room before.
You have been.
You've been in this room many times before, but never doing a show together. So again, tell everybody about where we are and what this place, this magical, fantastic place is that we're sitting. Where are we?
This place is the reason I do not have a life anymore. I do have more of a life maybe than Braden, but not as much as I used to.
Goes without saying.
Yeah. We're at the Cast Collective on Music Row. This is my child. This project is. It's a podcasting studio, rentable podcasting studios in here, photo and video services and studios, event venue, and we'll be doing our show from here.
Possibly, maybe, potentially in the future. Stay tuned. Upgrades are coming, apparently.
Subscribe to YouTube.
Let's work on the pitch here. If someone wants to book your space and they're in Nashville and they'd like to, I don't know, come into town with a group of friends and maybe book a special event space, where should they go?
They can go to,
Besides Jasper's, of course.
Probably tomorrow they can go to our website.
Probably.
That's up and that's been a big project this week. But right now you can Instagram DM us, cast_collective. It's a good way to get to us. Or you can call our office phone.
What?
Yeah.
Can you put it on the screen for the good people? Let's put it on the screen. Puff Daddy, PDaddyJr.com combs.
.com comes. It's 615-712-7097 is the
You don't have a
number.
QR code yet? That's what we need is a QR code.
No, we don't.
Yes, we do. We need a QR
Okay,
code.
well,
Everyone
make
has
Sean
to have
do
a
it.
QR code. All right. So on the show today, we're going to dive into Bryan Harsin. What is going on with the Auburn Tigers entering year number 2? Your guess is as good as ours. We're going to talk Tennessee and Josh Heupel. Expectations very different for that team this year. We'll talk Clark Lea and Vanderbilt. Some news this week that they got some stadium renovations coming. I've got a couple of questions about Clark Lea and the experiment that's taking place on West End here in Nashville, so we'll dive into that.
Yep.
And, of course, we'll talk about Shane Beamer, but not until after we talk to Shane Beamer. We had a chance to catch up with the South Carolina head football coach. Year number 2 should be a lot of fun. So let's dive into it. Before we do, Fringe Element is brought to you by the wonderful and amazing folks at
Jasper's, just a rock's throw and a couple skips from anywhere on West End. You can get there by plane, train, automobile.
not public transportation. We don't have that in Nashville.
Yeah, we don't have that. If we did, you could get to Jasper's on it. It's great all across the Southeast.
Oh, keep going.
Today's producer, Camille, who's new, she goes to Belmont. Braden met her yesterday, day before.
A couple weeks ago, but whatever, it's fine.
She is from a location that has Four Top Hospitality, which is what, Camille?
Huntsville, Alabama will get a Four Top Hospital. I think Amerigo is going in at Huntsville, Alabama. They're building one right now. They've got 13 locations across the Southeast. They've got Char, etc., Etch, Saltine, Jasper's, and Amerigo. They're in Ridgewood, Mississippi, Flowood, Mississippi. They're in Jackson, Mississippi. They're in Birmingham, Huntsville, Memphis, Nashville, of course, you name it. They've got you covered. Check out one of their great locations across the Southeast, and we do appreciate them sponsoring and providing and promoting the show, so you guys should go out there and promote and go to Jasper's and go to Four Top Hospitality. Sound good?
Yep.
All right, let's start with the Auburn Tigers because, of course, it's the Auburn Tigers. Bryan Harsin, year number 2. Again, this is a heat check for the 4 coaches in year number 2 as they enter the summer. Where are they today versus where they were last year? Where are the programs? Where are the fans? We're going to spend some time with Auburn, Tennessee. Obviously, we'll talk with Shane Beamer a little bit later on, of course, and Vanderbilt, which I think there's a couple of big questions for each one of these teams, Erin, that I think we're going to try to answer for you guys today as we enter SEC Media Days. Month is like a month away or so. Bryan Harsin, 6-7, 3-5. They lost 5 straight to end the season. I think that's a little deceiving because they had a 4-point loss on the road against South Carolina. They were in overtime against Alabama. And if they just make like one play, they beat Alabama, the team that played in the national title game and won the SEC. And of course, they lost to Houston in the bowl game 17-13. So 1-score losses in 3 of those. They also beat LSU on the road for the first time in forever. They beat Arkansas on the road, which is pretty good. They beat Ole Miss pretty handily defensively. And Ole Miss was a team last year that had the best regular season in the history of Ole Miss football. So I think on the surface... How
late in the season did Ole Miss and Auburn play?
You've got the magazine there, the Handy Dandy Athlon Sports. I want to say it was like two-thirds of the way through the season is, I believe, where it was.
Were we missing any crucial players on Ole Miss side?
No, I don't. They came out and shut them down on defense, I think. And so what I think is interesting is I think there's an outward view of Auburn as like this completely chaotic dumpster fire. The boosters are in control and nobody really knows what's going on. But like they actually were pretty close to being like a 9-win team.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. Since you say that, I was going to ask you how many games does he need to survive? Does Bryan Harsin need? Yeah. I was going to say 9, and I think that there could be a couple years or one more year of it being lower than that with fans being okay. But I don't think because he's not really willing to meddle with boosters in that same sense, I think it's going to take him more wins earlier to at least have an easier chance of staying around. What do you think?
So I don't know what the number is. I think that's the question we're going to try to answer today is how many games does he have to win to keep his job? I would argue they need to do something spectacular, 9 or 10 wins, and prove that like all this other stuff that we've thought about Auburn and Bryan Harsin wasn't necessarily the relationship more than any, one individual thing.
10 wins is a lot.
Right, exactly. But Auburn does crazy shit. So I don't know. I don't see 0-8 because I think there's too much talent. This is sort of getting into the roster, which is Derek Hall, Tank Bigsby, Owen Papo. Like they have star power on their team. They play Mercer, San Jose State, Penn State, which could either boat race them and destroy Bryan Harsin, or they're going to beat Penn State and reestablish like, Auburn's going to be good this year. And then they play Missouri and LSU, all of those at home. 5-0 is not crazy to think about if you're Auburn. They got a couple more winnable games. If they just, to me, this is about Bryan Harsin sticking to what he does, right? Like he's got to develop a quarterback, and they got to run the football with Tank Bigsby. And if they stick to the things that he does with his guys that he handpicked to do these things, that's where that's where Bryan Harsin gives him himself the best chance to be good, I guess. I don't know if that makes any sense.
No, I think it does. I think when you talk about those weapons, like, Derek Hall and Tank Bigsby and those guys that have had some experience on the field, had some experience in the SEC and are just powerhouses in and of themselves. And that combined with, he's a football, it's not like he's not a football minded guy. It's just, it was really hard to like wrap your brain around Bryan Harsin because he keeps things close to the chest. And I don't really know what's happening. And you're not wrong about the beginning of their schedule setting them up for a potential 5-0 run. It just depends on, Penn State's really the big one. And then, again, I still feel kind of in the same place with LSU. I know they're going to be in a better place, but we just don't know how soon Brian Kelly's going to be able to turn them around.
I think for me, it's I don't think it's fair to Bryan Harsin what has happened. I don't think the boosters have behaved properly. I don't think Bryan Harsin has done everything amazingly. He's had as many offensive coordinators, 3, as he has SEC wins right now, 3 on his career at Auburn. So like some of this is his own doing. I think how bad they were last year is overblown a little bit because if you really go back and replay the season, they were a little bit closer. They have some star power. The defense is top 5 again, probably in the SEC. So the question for me is, can he save himself, right? Mm-hmm. He's got to develop a quarterback. He's promoted his coordinators from within after losing guys. He's sort of betting on himself on this.
Yeah. And
I don't even know, do you even believe if he believes that they're going to keep him around? Because I think anything under 9 or 10 wins, and they're probably going to move on from him.
I'm not sure. What's his buyout? Do you think he wants to?
Yeah. Yeah. Buyout life. It was a good life.
Yeah. Do you think he wants to stick around? I think he wants to stick around. All I'm going to say is that I would like to know what the offseason looks very different for coaches and teams that have had an extreme amount of turnover versus ones that were just able to build on those same building blocks. And that might sound very just straightforward and understood, but really, you're completely having to turn things on their head when you promote. Even if you're promoting guys from within, you're still taking over roles that they've never occupied before, and you're just not able to make that same progress if they were great. But that it does add a lot of extra work that I think sometimes is overlooked.
Yeah. So at quarterback, I don't think they have as good a situation as maybe they had even last year.
Yeah.
Whether it's TJ Finley, I don't think Zach Calzada is some guy that is going to save the world. Like he beat A&M or he beat Bama one time. I just don't think he's an above average starting quarterback in the SEC. They got a couple of freshmen, Garner and Ashford. I can't ever say the Holden Garner's name correctly, but again, point is he's the offensive guy. His job is to develop the quarterback. He's promoted 2 coordinators. This is on him now. Like I can blame Auburn and the boosters for being silly because they are. Mm-hmm. And they act like a bunch of, I don't know, like feral cats. But like Harsin is betting on himself with his decision-making process in this offseason. So I think the hot seat is always there at Auburn. If I had to answer your question again, I think I would go 9 wins, he keeps his job. Less than that, and you lose to Bama, you don't keep your job. I think half the boosters want him out already. Like right now, today, in June.
Do we actually know what his buyout would be?
It'll be, I think it goes down at the end of the calendar year or somewhere around the end of the regular season. So I don't have that number in front of me. I want to say it's like 19 million, I think. And it goes down to like 14 or something like that. I don't,
19 million to not do your job anymore.
Yeah.
People have to really want you to not do your job anymore.
Auburn's good at that.
Yep.
Auburn's very good at that. So I don't know. It's like run the football, play good defense, develop a quarterback. That's the recipe. And Auburn could be in a lot of games.
Yeah.
With that recipe. So it's not a crazy recipe, which is the exact opposite recipe of the Tennessee Volunteer offense.
Yeah.
Which is about Josh Heupel and Hendon Hooker throwing it as much as possible. So Josh Heupel, 7-6. We'll talk Tennessee here, and then Vanderbilt, and then we'll get to Shane Beamer. 4-4 last year. And listen, they got 4 offensive line starters back. They averaged almost 40 points per game. Their quarterback was one of the most efficient in the country. What do you make of Josh Heupel coming into this season being under pressure? Because this summer is very different for Josh Heupel. Last year it was Tennessee fans were sort of just throwing their hands up and saying, well, whatever happens is good. Anything good that happens is a good thing. Whereas now I think people are expecting another step with the program. That's a very different place to be in as a head coach.
It's Tennessee, so they want to be good. We know how. I won't throw you in this category because you're not even close to the worst of them.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I don't know what you do with that, actually.
No, I don't even think that was a backhanded compliment. I don't even think it was a compliment. What was that?
I don't think it was a compliment.
It was a drive-by is what that was.
Yeah.
Continue.
So whenever you make progress, especially as SEC fans, being as dedicated to the sport as they are, people are going to want to see improvement. But I do think there's a difference, and you can look at it with, Butch Jones, it just felt like the cards could fall at any moment. Like he's able to put together like relatively good records season-wise.
Good recruiting classes?
Yeah, seasons record-wise, I guess is what I'm saying. But with Heupel, it actually feels like there's building blocks there. It doesn't just feel like, you're at the end of the season or like those 2 games are falling in your favor because of a Hail Mary. Like Josh Heupel actually feels like he built it and there's something to stand on. I think a lot of that has to do with relationships, both on the field and off the field, which we know how I feel about that. I think it's the cornerstone of everything. But to me, maybe even if this season isn't outstanding for Tennessee, I still feel like we're moving in the right direction, and the fans know that.
I think that's true.
Unless they go backwards.
No, I don't think you're wrong about any of that. I think it is. The only thing I would push back on and just raise the question of is are the foundational building blocks actually there, or was he like, I got Hendon Hooker off the transfer pile scrap heap. My offense is really tough to stop in year number 1, but it's a lot easier to stop in year number 2. I still don't have the same athletes as Alabama and Georgia. The schedule's a little easier this year. So I think they could have success this season. And there's lots of, so that sounds like I'm being negative to Hendon Hooker and Josh Heupel, but I think that's right. I think I don't disagree with much of what you're saying there. I think there's some bigger questions about like, are these foundational pieces they're actually putting into place? That sounds like a negative towards Josh Heupel because again, the offense, he kind of found Hendon Hooker off the transfer portal scrap heap. His offense is much easier to stop, or a little easier to stop in year number 2 than it is in year number 1. They've got a lot of offensive personnel. Can they recruit with Alabama and Georgia? I think there's a lot of good building blocks and foundational stuff for Tennessee. I don't know how much of it translates to like big time success, if that makes sense. Like he's absolutely turned the program around culturally, reinstalled professional adult vibes, right? But because Pruitt, but I don't know if some of the things he is doing have enough upside to get where Tennessee fans expect.
I think
that makes sense.
I think when you talk about building blocks, you're talking a lot more about personnel and players than I am.
Maybe.
Or players.
Maybe.
I'm not really talking about that as the building blocks. I think there's other things that have to be in place first to even get those good players to stay. I mean,
that's what Clark Lea's doing right now.
Well, yeah, and just like and he's doing. We can see that he's doing a better job because the kids actually like playing football.
Yeah, yes, and
so that's what I guess I mean. I'm not just
fair.
talking
That's
about
fair.
the person or the players themselves. I'm talking
Right.
about, and you can see improvements. You see, they're like scoring. We're scoring 17 more points a game last year. They're also allowing a lot of points. But we talk about defensively. Building, we talk about this a lot. It's easier to kind of gradually build a defense up, and that does depend on personnel.
Yes,
but they're not.
You can trick them with an
starting
offense.
over.
You can trick them with an offense. It's hard to trick SEC behemoths with a defense.
Right.
It's hard to do that. No, I agree. I think you're right. And again, that's why I sort of like agree with what you're saying, which is they needed and we've said this a million times on the show. They needed an adult in the room who was a professional football coach, and they got one. My question has always been about his upside. I think he may not be the right coach to win a championship, but he's the right coach for right now. So my question about this team going into year 2, which is, can they overachieve? Can they hit the marks? I think Vegas, I want to say it's like 8.5, which you're asking. Here's my problem with this sort of like analysis and projection of Tennessee and Josh Heupel in year 2. You're asking them to be perfect. You're asking the offense to carry a bad defense. And again, you want to hear bad? This is not safe for work. 101st in the nation in third down defense. 85th in the nation in giving up explosive plays on defense. 12th in the SEC, 90th in the nation in scoring defense. 121st in red zone defense. They gave up 92% scoring rates. 50 different attempts, trips into the red zone on defense. That's 89th in the country. 113th in the nation in red zone touchdowns allowed. Point is, Tennessee, not good on defense. I don't know what Tim Banks, the defensive coordinator, is going to do to fix that. When now they are worse on the defensive line and worse at corner. That is my question. You're asking the offense and Hendon Hooker to be perfect every Saturday to carry the defense, and then they're going to have to win almost all of their swing games to get to that 9-win mark, which is Pittsburgh, Florida, LSU, Kentucky, Missouri, South Carolina.
I would like to know how much time they spent on defense. Do we have that number?
What do you mean, like time on the field?
Yeah,
because no idea.
Because that has, to me, that has a lot to do with red zone. Like, I mean, you're tired. Let's see how much their defense was on the field.
Well, their offense does run a bunch of fast plays.
Yeah. So there's like a stamina involved. There's like a bunch of factors. Also, I trust Coach Banks very much. Their schedule, if you're looking at the 8.5 thing, they've got their wins. I'm guessing that Vegas is counting Ball State, Pittsburgh, Akron, UT Martin, Kentucky, I guess they counted.
I don't know. That's the
Missouri,
thing.
South Carolina, Vanderbilt. Doesn't really matter. That's 8 games.
I think Vanderbilt's counted for sure.
Well, thank you.
The swing games are Pittsburgh, Florida, LSU, Kentucky, Missouri, South Carolina. And I think you have to win 3 or 4 of those to get to 9 wins. And I think you're asking the offense to be, Hendon Hooker, who was almost perfect last year. Mm-hmm. You're asking him to be perfect again. And then you've got to kind of clean sweep the games that you're supposed to maybe win that are 50-50 games. Mm-hmm. And that is my question about Josh Heupel. Because again, if you read the anonymous scouting report in our fancy, handy dandy Athlon Sports magazine here, if you're watching on the YouTubes, quote, they're pretty easy to break down because that offense is pretty easy to break down.
Stop. That's a quote.
Exact quote of an opposing coach for the Tennessee Volunteers offense. This was Drew Lock's problem coming out of Missouri. Heupel was his coordinator. And the whole knock on Drew Lock was that he wasn't an evolved passer. He didn't play in a complicated enough offense, and it's why he struggled when he got to the NFL. Now, we're not playing in the NFL, and Hendon Hooker's very good. But my question is, what does Tim Banks do on the defense to make them better, and can the offense be perfect? And I have doubts about Tennessee being perfect. That just seems like a tough thing for them to do.
Yeah.
In general.
In
general.
Especially with, their schedule is always difficult, although it's been worse.
LSU's down, quote unquote. Although Kentucky's up.
Just see what Florida can do, but that's always
road trip to South Carolina's tricky. Florida's down. You're getting Florida and LSU in the year that they change coaches.
Yeah.
So the idea is, and you're getting them early in the year, Florida in particular, and at home. If you can't beat Florida this year, Tennessee, you don't deserve to beat Florida. Like, full stop.
You heard it here.
Full stop. Yeah.
Braden's
earth-shattering stuff.
I will say, so before we move on, just going back to the relationship thing, which is going to come up. This makes sense on this podcast because we're going to talk to Shane Beamer, and that is at the core of everything that he does. Mm-hmm. And there have been a lot of guys that have players at Tennessee talked out about Heupel and just what he's been able to do. And he also is the only coach in the SEC that had the experience, that had the playing experience that is most similar to what these guys are going through right now. Actually playing at a Division I program for as long as he did and was a Heisman contender. I mean, he's been there. So he understands what these kids emotionally are going through. Being in the spotlight, I guess not as much as they are with social media now being what it is, but just understanding them on an emotional level and actually giving a shit.
Yeah.
So
they like playing for Josh Heupel.
They love playing for him.
There's no question about that. According to this, and this is teamrankings.com, Tennessee 130th in time of possession.
You don't really want to be 130th
offense.
in anything.
Out of 130.
Oh.
So 24 minutes and 24 seconds. That's what this says. That could, this is teamrankings.com. That was the fastest I could do.
Time of possession, 24 minutes and 22 seconds.
This is the fastest I could do that looking it up in real time.
The lowest on time of possession.
On offense.
Yep. Okay, well, see, look at me. That proved the point. The defense is exhausted. Please get them off the field.
Well, against Ole Miss for sure. And not just Ole Miss people faking injuries in that game, by the way. There was a couple of times Josh Heupel was like, go down.
I mean, if a team is at the end of a 10-minute drive and they're in the red zone stats are going to suck because they're
right. But that doesn't change the fact that they're.
I'm not saying it shouldn't be better. I get that.
No, what I mean is that the offense is then causing a problem.
Yeah,
like the whole philosophy is flawed at that point.
Yeah.
Like if you're going to leave your defense on the field for 37 minutes a game, you're going to have to rethink how you call plays on offense.
Too many minutes.
Yes, there you go.
Give Banks a break.
All right, any more Tennessee stuff? I think here's the key: Tennessee fans excited, happy. Moving into a year for the first time in a long time. That's okay. I think they should be. I think expecting 9 or 10 wins and losing only to Bama and Florida is asking too much of this program with this talent level, this coach, and this program right now. I said program twice. So
I think you guys are heading in the right direction. Just
who are you talking to?
The Tennessee fans.
You guys.
Okay, sorry.
Who are
Tennessee
these
volunteers. I think you guys are heading in the right direction.
There you go.
Just give it another year of somewhat of patience, and then you can bitch next year.
There you go. I can already tell if they go 8-4. There will be bitching. Clark Lea 2-10, 0-8. How about this? They've won one SEC game in 3 years.
Yikes.
0-9 in the pandemic year. 1-7 their last win. Erin Dugan. Do you remember the date of the Vanderbilt Commodores' last win?
At one point, I could spout them all off, but no.
October 19th, 2019 is the last time Vanderbilt won an SEC game. 2 of those years were Derek Mason, of course.
Is it South Carolina?
Missouri, a ranked Missouri team, number 22 here in Nashville, right across.
I was there.
Right across
I still worked there.
From the Cast Collective Studios here.
They haven't won since I worked an SEC game since I was employed there.
Probably not.
It's not great.
Things haven't gone well for Vanderbilt since you left.
There's a positive correlation between you guys losing games and me not working there. I'm just kidding.
So to me, like, I went out to spring practice a few times. I looked at the roster. They've got to make a quarterback decision. Either Mike Wright or Ken Seals. They've got to decide that. Wright's a little bit more of the leader guy, a little bit more athletic. Seals' arm, I've watched it so many times now. His arm is just better. He throws a better football. So they got to decide on a quarterback. To me, this is the takeaway and the conversation around Vanderbilt is more broad, and it's the territory that you like to be in, which is I want this selfishly as a Nashvilleian. I want the experiment to work with Clark Lea because I want to see good football games. Mm-hmm. But I also believe in what I'm seeing in the SEC across the league. When we talk to Sam Pittman, go check out the episode on YouTube. When we discuss Mark Stoops, when you hear from Shane Beamer later on, it's about people. We talked about Josh Heupel. It is about people. It's about culture. I know there's a lot of cliches in there, but it's about relationships and communication and all this other stuff. And I think if you're going to be successful at Vanderbilt, you need investment from the people that are running things, which we are finally now seeing. Press release on Tuesday of this week saying, "Hey, look, there's some construction happening. We're doing things. Look, spending money on like the suites at the stadium," which is just the first step of like many big dollar investments.
Right.
So that's number one. And number two, you need someone that like people trust and want to be around.
Yeah.
And I think he is that, and I think they are doing this. I want the experiment to work. I want it to work at Vanderbilt because I want to see more of the style of approach to college football that we're seeing in the SEC. I want to see more of it and less Jeremy Pruitt.
We've yes, and we've seen it before in the not so distant past, which Vanderbilt had many tens of years without seeing a sign of hope. But then, in the last decade, we've seen that Vanderbilt can be a contender in the right situation. And we are a little bit, or I at least am a little bit spoiled from that because I came into school at the right time going there. And then now I'm experiencing this, which is not great. But yes, you're right about just investing in the program. I mean, you have to take a step. They're so behind that you have to take a step like a $300 million athletic campaign step to even keep up. And by the time it's complete, when you're in the SEC, you have another school coming in behind you doing another $70 million stadium renovation like Texas A&M, and then all of a sudden you're behind again. So you have to make this big leap. I hope it's enough to get guys through the door and realize the value that Vanderbilt can have from every other perspective that's not going 0-12.
21 straight losses, actually.
Thank you.
0 for 21.
Yes. Great way to start a Wednesday.
So here's the, this is going to sound like an insult to Vanderbilt fans. It's not meant to be, but Clark Lea can use it as an advantage, which is if you're not going to have this overly rabid, insane fan base like everyone else in the SEC has to deal with, hopefully that allows him time to do his job.
He'll have time.
Because Kentucky fans, this is what makes Georgia so fascinating to me, is because we talked to Seth Emerson about this. Georgia's more chill than everybody else in the SEC. They're willing to allow the administration to do their job.
They're not more chill than everyone else in the SEC.
No, of the teams that want to win championships.
Of the high.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, of you compare them to Alabama, LSU, A&M. Florida, Tennessee, A&M, they are way more chill than all those programs.
Yes.
But the reason is because they kind of allow the people in charge to slowly shift the program when it needs to slowly. They're driving a cruise ship and they're willing to allow the time to turn the boat, right? And Kentucky fans did this very well. Kentucky fans allowed Mitch Barnhart and Mark Stoops to turn the boat slowly. And that's where Vanderbilt fans, I think because they don't have as large a fan base, the student body population is not as big. They don't they don't have the same rabid nature. And that hopefully allows Clark Lea to see this thing through.
Yeah.
Maybe it doesn't work out, maybe it does, but I think he's going to be given the opportunity.
That's what he wanted. He wanted this job. He wanted this to be, the remainder of his career. He's alluded to that. And we knew from the jump, it was at least hope was 2 years away.
Minimum.
If you were paying attention, you knew that something good is going to take a second, sit back and have a drink. It's going to take him a minute. So,
and then you go to spring practice, you watch the offensive and defensive lines, and you need another drink.
Well,
because it's not pretty.
Yeah.
It's not pretty.
I think he's going to have time. He's not going to have the insane pressure, obviously, that everyone else has. I mean, the closest thing, I guess, would be a Missouri, and it's not even close to how much time would be allowed.
I would put Missouri at number 2.
The second most
13.
Second most
least pressure
allowing of time.
The second most allowing of time. I'm done with the checking of the bags conversation. All right. Clark Lea, expectations, just a win in the SEC. If you get a win, I think you've accomplished something. I think that's a victory for
2 would be great, but yeah, I'm with you.
Look at their schedule. You got it right there.
Elon.
Check. Okay, they win that one.
Northern Illinois.
It's not easy, but they could win that one. Yeah.
Well, I don't think we're predicted to win Hawaii.
No, not in Hawaii. No. But you could go out there and win.
And Wake is always hard.
Wake is very good.
And good.
And they're very good. They're a top 20 team right now. They're very good. Okay.
So that's 2 max.
We're going to talk South Carolina, and we're going to talk with Shane Beamer. And we're going to, listen, we asked him what is different about this South Carolina team today. What did he learn from year number 1 to year number 2? You asked him a question about what are the advantages to have never been calling a play. He had a really interesting answer, I thought, to that question. A good one. Why, because the knock on Shane Beamer has always been, didn't call a play, was never a coordinator.
And I wasn't really knocking him.
No, you weren't. But it's what... know what you don't know. If you're little, use it as an advantage, that kind of thing.
What senses are heightened because you, what else is of your senses are heightened having not been a head coach?
A lot about communication, a lot about style, a lot about people and relationships. He's going to explain sort of his work philosophy as being a coach. Why were they able to overcome all these things? Why is Spencer Rattler going to be better in the SEC than he was in the Big 12? So a lot of stuff with Shane Beamer.
Yeah, he's great.
We covered a lot of ground with him. We'll do our South Carolina breakdown after our conversation. So when we come back, Shane Beamer, the head coach of your South Carolina Gamecocks. Fringe Element is a podcast about the SEC, and it is brought to you by...
It's brought to you by Jasper's. It's your, not necessarily my, but your favorite neighborhood tavern that is complete with very specialized desserts by a dessert chef that's named Megan.
Okay. Question. By the way, go to
I didn't take advertising, people.
Go to Jasper's.
What are you going to do?
Go to Jasper's. Parking is free. The food is great. Go visit all the other, if you're around the SEC, go visit all the other wonderful 13 locations and four top hospitality.
I'm going to stop you.
Okay.
And just defend myself here.
No.
I've done 94.
I wasn't insulting you.
No, you're not. But I'm judging myself. I've done 94 made up random ads for Jasper's times 3.
94.
Times 3. What is that? 282. I'm good at math. 282 random ads. Fresh out.
I've done a few of those, by the way. I think it's more like 272.
Okay.
But whatever. Anyway, here's my question. Because what I like about your creativity in these ad situations is that you spark thought.
Did I?
Yes.
Okay.
What is the difference? And maybe we need Jasper's to get on the line here. Maybe we need Four Top Hospitality to get on the line here. Or jump into the comments, folks. What is the difference between a tavern, a pub, a bar? Am I missing another one? What are the, are there actual, again, there may not be an answer to this. It may just be branding. I don't know.
No, this is interesting because we also had a conversation earlier about certain words that were bad, but not as bad in other cultures or languages, like in Britain, for example.
Oh, you're gonna say the words. No, I think you should. You've already said it. You've taken us down this path. Go ahead.
Well, okay.
Go ahead.
Here's the thing. I hate this for Jasper's, but it is what it is.
Go to Jasper's, everybody.
We had a conversation earlier about the word twat.
Yes.
Which is an effective word in many scenarios. It's important. It's an important part of the English language.
Ugh.
I, unfortunately, for my parents and anyone that, I would like to respect
be very
me,
important.
I do use that word.
In what context? Like insulting people? Because I would teach my daughters it doesn't matter what word you use. I just wanted to know what tavern meant, and now here we are.
Well, here's the thing, but it's like there's some British, and Camille brought this up, who's our intern again.
Wanker. How about wanker?
So there's things that maybe in Britain or certain places aren't as bad as they are here. And did we decide twat was one of those?
Listen, you can keep saying it on the show if you'd like, and we'll see if the checks keep coming in. But I don't have a problem with any word, so I'm not really offended by much of anything. I think it's a great word when an English person uses it the way it's supposed to be used. I think it's like wanker. I think it's great. I think it's funny. I think it's creative. It's different.
Maybe not me as much, but yeah. Okay.
Well, like if I said it to someone on like anywhere,
right?
I don't think it would go over the same way as you saying it, or if I had a British accent.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Which is unfair because America's the best.
Right. And so
America individualism.
I feel like these are connected, but like pub, for example, are we leaving out, because isn't pub just like the British word for a bar? Or Irish?
These are the important questions I was asking. What is the difference?
Camille says no. Hold on one second.
Pub, Irish, and
Camille, we need to get you a mic.
Irish.
What's the difference?
Kids can go into pubs.
Kids are allowed into
pubs.
Kids are allowed in pubs. Well, I know a lot of bars that my kids go into. Is that bad?
Well, pubs specialize in drinks.
Okay. So there's no pub fare. You can't eat at a pub.
You can't. Oh, you can't eat at a pub.
I
Well,
think
where do you get fish and chips?
See, no free shouts because we're talking about Jasper's here, but I think there are a few pubs in the city that have food.
Yeah, but they're not like pubs.
I think one of them actually
like the
has
Gulches.
it in their name. Don't use names. No free shouts.
Okay.
Go to Jasper's. This is a very difficult conversation to have when you're sponsored by a local neighborhood watering hole, which is what's the difference in a watering hole?
It's also a restaurant.
It's also a very nice restaurant.
It's not a pub.
With better food.
Right.
Than most any pub or tavern.
According to Camille. I hope she's right.
Well, go to Jasper's or any of the other 13 locations across the Southeast.
Don't be a
twat. Top hospitality, and don't be a wanker.
Get us out of this ad, please.
Shane, thank you so much for joining us here. We do really appreciate it. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. Appreciate you guys having me on. Hope you're doing well also.
So let's start with this stage of this season versus the stage of last season, which is you come in and all the talking points are your career and sort of your background and the roles you've had. Well, you get here, you guys get to 6 wins in the regular season. What is different? What did you learn through that first year of being that role that you are now executing today that was different maybe this time last year?
No, great question. I think a couple things. One, you know your team better. Now, obviously, we've got some new faces that have come in since last season, but the returning players, you understand them and you have better relationships with them. And then they know you better, as the head coach also. So that's different. And I think the biggest thing for me is just you have a better idea of what's coming and how to handle it. Everything that we did last year was the very first time, the first spring practice, the first summer workouts, the first preseason camp, the first win, the first loss, first bowl game, you name it. Now we've done everything one time. So it's the second time through. And so you're able to, for me, look back at things you did last year, maybe from a practice organization, practice schedule that you liked, didn't like, being able to look back at notes from last year and tweak things for this year as you continue to evolve and get better. So that's the biggest thing for me.
How would you describe your sort of I guess organizational psychology might be the right way? You could, culture is another one that people use, identity, leadership, whatever. But what is it that when you talk to recruits, when you talk to your team, when you talk to boosters, what is it that you're trying to portray as sort of the identity of who you guys are at South Carolina?
Yeah. We have a mindset that we want to play with. And we talk to our players about being, the most competitive team in the country, the toughest and hardest working, but also the closest. And, I think that portrays itself very accurately when people want to hope watch us play and they see the physicality and the effort that we play with. But the closest of the team is something that we really, are very intentional about. And we've had so many recruits that have been on campus this month, and we just had 13 young men and their families here on official visits last weekend. And so many of those families, came in and when I met with them, they commented just on our players and our current team and how close they are and what great young men they are and things like that. So, that the close and connected football team. And then, the things that, I'm sure all coaches want to portray on the field as well.
Guys like us, we all have opinions. That's our job. Men and women like us, Aaron and I are here to blather all summer long and make predictions. And so that's part of the job. And certainly you guys hit the over last year with the way you guys performed on the field. And first of all, was there any secret sauce to why that took place and why you were able to maximize your roster? But also, how do you use it to kind of build momentum? Because every year feels like a new year with roster management and the things you guys have to do. How do you actually take that and use it in terms of development momentum for your team moving forward?
Yeah, going back to last season, I think it goes back to what you just asked. We were a really, really close and connected team that cared for one another and believed in one another. And it was an awesome group to be around. And I'm proud of as the head coach of the fact that, we started out 2-0, then we lost 2 in a row. We were 2-2. But after that point, we never lost more than one game in a row. Now, we never won more than 2 games in a row, so we got to be more consistent. But we never let a loss, defeat us where we lost the next week also. We always came back. And I think we outscored, I think, all of our opponents but one in the fourth quarter. So we were a group that competed from start to finish, which I love. So I think the fact that when we competed like we did and we were super close allowed us to have the success that we had. And then going forward, you're exactly right. Every year is different, but they're, winning 3 of 5 at the end of the season, beating Florida and Auburn, beating North Carolina in the bowl game, has given this program already had a lot of new energy at the end of last season, but then winning that bowl game has given us even more as we go into this year. And certainly we've lost a lot of pieces. We've added some pieces for sure, but we've really tried to convey to our guys that nobody's sitting around patting each other on the back, that we got a lot of work to do. And all the work that went into winning 7 games last year is going to take even more to take the next step and go from 7 to the next level.
Coach, how do you've had to deal with obviously your fair share of doubters just from not having that direct head coaching experience, but did that in some ways heighten other senses for you? Were you able to see things that you think coaches with a lot of head coaching experience weren't able to see? What did that give you instead of thinking about what it took, had taken away?
Yeah. I always, as an assistant coach, and I was an assistant coach for 21 years, I guess, before I got this head coaching job. And I hadn't been a head coach before, but I felt like all the different roles that I had in my career had prepared me to be a head coach better when I got that opportunity. I had been a recruiting coordinator, and I had coached offense and defense. I had been a special teams coordinator. I'd been an associate head coach. I'd been an interim head coach for a game. So I had a lot of experiences that helped me. And then once, and I was always preparing to become a head coach, hopefully, during my career as an assistant coach. So, I think when I became a head coach here, no, I didn't have that experience, and you're never prepared. So whether I had been the head coach at a small school, or whether I'm a head coach in the SEC, you're never totally prepared for that role. I mean, I don't care what anybody says. There's just so many things that come at you that, even growing up the son of a coach and seeing that myself, a lot of things that I didn't even realize, being the son of a head coach all these years. But I felt as prepared as I could have been because of the roles that I had. And then, you learn as you go, but I'm glad I took the route that I did. I mean, I think there's a narrative out there sometimes that you have to be a offensive coordinator or defensive coordinator to become a head coach. And I think that's ridiculous. I mean, I've been there's a lot of guys that I've been around that are fantastic offensive coordinators, can call plays with the best of them, but it doesn't mean they're going to be a great head coach, because when you're in the head coaching chair, there's just so many different things that you have to deal with that have nothing to do with X's and O's and calling plays. So, it worked for me, or it has worked for me to get me this opportunity, and I felt prepared as I could be because of it.
Yeah, Seems to be working.
Yeah,
hope so. Some would say it's not. We'll see.
Well, no, your team psychologist, your fundraiser, your it's all this other stuff that you have to be as a head coach. And I'm curious because. And I'm not going to mention the other guy in the state, but that was his plan when he set forth for his university. Mark Stoops at Kentucky did the same thing with Mitch Barnhart when he sat down and got the job. I think Sam Pittman's doing this at Arkansas. Like, there's this sort of new wave of we're just going to hire ball coaches that know how to manage a bunch of people and do it really well. And I think that's different than the way college football was operating, let's say, for the last 10 years or so. What is it? South Carolina has all the fan support, all the resources. The recruiting base geographically is wonderful. What is it that South Carolina needs to sort of put it all together? What's the glue that it needs?
Yeah, I think we just got to continue to bring in great players and great people to this program. I mean, I feel like we have all the resources that we need to be successful. We've won national championships here in women's basketball multiple times, and baseball and other sports as well. So we've got a fantastic university. We've got great academics. Columbia's an awesome place to live. South Carolina's a great state to live in. Amazing football facility that our players train in each and every day. We play in the best conference in America. So, I mean, there's so many things, and we just got to continue to bring in great people into this program, great players. And I was here at a time with Steve Spurrier where we had some great players like Stephon Gilmore and Melvin Ingram and Alshon Jeffrey and Jadeveon Clowney and Marcus Lattimore and Connor Shaw and on and on and on and on and on. And we were pretty successful when we brought those guys in. And my last year here was 2010. And in that season, we beat Clemson, Georgia, Florida, Alabama when they were number one in the country, and Tennessee all in the same season. So we've had some really great years around here. We've just got to do a better job of sustaining it. And, to get back to that level, it's just going to be one day. I know it's cliche, but one day at a time, and just continuing to bring great people into this program, because we have the resources that we need to be successful. I tell recruits all the time that when I got hired, I wanted to create a program that checked all the boxes for what a student athlete was looking for when he made his college decision. And I feel like I have here at Carolina that we have. And now we just got to keep moving forward.
We know you're a relationship guy. That's pretty apparent. And you've talked a lot about this. And you now have guys that are coming from schools that you coached at before, from Oklahoma, coming to play for you again. And I know you're a coach and you have to be that, but how far beyond coaching does your relationship go with your guys?
Whatever the word is for endless, infinite or something. I mean, that's what it is. And that's one of the things, Erin, when I was an assistant coach, I've always going back to that question about preparing to be a head coach, like I was a special teams coordinator. So when you're a special teams coordinator, you have to have a relationship with every player on the team, because no 5-star recruit is coming to the SEC school that he chooses to be the right guard on the punt team, So you've got to develop relationships with these guys to make them want to go play special teams and things like that. So that gave me great experience. And, I'm a people person. I do love building relationships with people. And now I did it as an assistant coach, and now as a head coach, I love it because I get to do that with 119 players that we have on our football team. And it's getting to know them, but I love the fact that my office door is always open and that players come in here and feel comfortable talking to me. It may be something casual. They just want to come in here and watch, TV and hang out. Or in my year and a half here, we've had some really deep conversations with kids about, struggles. And at the end of the day, they're big time college football players, but they're still 18, 19, 20-year-old young men that are dealing with the same things that any 18, 19, 20-year-old is, whether it be girlfriends or family issues back home or mental health or whatever it may be. And I love that aspect of it. And it goes, it's beyond just when they're here. I mean, it's being invested in them when they're out in this building, obviously, but when they're outside this building as well. So it's can't put a figure on it, and it's endless, but I love every second of it.
I'm sure you planned this your entire career to take over as a head coach for the first time following a worldwide pandemic and entering the most chaotic period of rules in NCAA history. But it does feel like what you're just saying, Shane, is what it comes down to, whether it's the portal, whether it's name, image, and likeness, whether, pick a subject that is sort of causing chaos in our sport today. It does feel like it just comes back to like being a person with a good relationship with another person. Mm-hmm. And if that's the case, like, isn't that the thing that's going to sort of propel success through all of the chaos, whether it's expansion or NIL or, a salary cap, whatever the hell the future looks like?
Yeah, I think so. And that's what it gets down to. Like, my dad used to say when he was coaching, he would tell his coaches all the time, work every day for the crisis, meaning like there's going to be something when the stuff hits the fan. And if you wait until that day to try and handle it, you're too far behind. Like the work you put in, the relationships that you develop allow you to sustain stuff when adversity comes and crazy stuff comes. And we were able to show that. If we weren't as close and connected a football team last season, I don't think we overcome the adversity that we dealt with injuries and playing 3-4 different quarterbacks and all that as well. But you're right, especially now in today's time and with the transfer portal and all that, it gets down to relationships, because we want to have a program here at Carolina that players don't want to leave. Now, does that mean everything's fun and hunky dory all the time? No, we work them really, 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 really hard, and we hold them accountable, and we're very demanding. But our players know that we care about them and we love them. And, I've yet to have, knock on wood, but I've yet to have any player on our team come into my office and tell me that he's transferring because he's unhappy. Now, we've had some guys transfer for, they just weren't, we were very honest with them and had conversations with them about their playing time and their roles, and that we didn't want them going anywhere, but if they wanted to play a little bit more, then they may need to, explore some other places. And I don't want to lose anybody, but that's why guys have left our program, not because this is a bad place that they're unhappy at. Right. And I don't think every school can say that.
Coach, so you've already pretty successfully changed the culture, and I'm sure you have more that you want to do, but from an outside perspective, that's happened pretty quickly. Mm-hmm. And you already exceeded expectations, maybe not for you, but for what a lot of people had for you guys in your first year. How do you plan on taking all this off-season success, like getting Spencer Rattler, like not only just transfers in the transfer portal, but all the work you've done, and then turning that into actually being a true standing SEC East contender?
Yeah, it's a challenge because, we play in the toughest conference in America. So yes, we did have some success last season, but nobody in this league is slowing down, and they're only continuing to get better and stronger as well. So understanding that and conveying to our guys that we won 7, and there's a lot of work that went into that, and we got to be even better. We got to be more consistent. I mean, there's so many things that we look back at last season that we did well, but there's a lot of things that we looked at that we didn't do well, and trying to improve those to help us have better success on the field. And we certainly want to embrace the excitement about the program right now, because it's certainly felt, nationwide. It's felt in recruiting. So we don't want to run, from that and all we did, but also understanding that 2021 is over, and this is a whole new team that has its own set of challenges that has to come together, pretty quick, because, to open the season, we're not tiptoeing into anything. So we've got to really come together, and, everything that I've seen in the weight room and things like that has gone, it shows me that our players have understand that and have embraced that.
I know you got to run, so I'll let you real quickly here on Spencer Rattler. We know all the physical tools. He's dripping with talent. We've seen the play. He struggled last year. What about him mentally that people don't know will allow him to flourish in an even tougher conference that you just mentioned?
I think I go back to Spencer at Oklahoma. He dealt with adversity. And, people think, well, he didn't have the 2021 year that he wanted and got benched and all that. No, I remember 2020 where Oklahoma's last 3 quarterbacks before Spencer were Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, and Jalen Hurts. And then here comes this hotshot freshman quarterback, Spencer Rattler. And what does he do? He proceeds to lose our first 2 Big 12 conference games. We lose to Kansas State at home, and we go on the road and we lose at Iowa State with Spencer as our starting quarterback. You guys know from covering college football, Oklahoma doesn't start out 0-2 in the Big 12. That just doesn't happen. Nope. So there was a lot of pressure and adversity he dealt with then. And then we go to Texas, play Texas down in the Cotton Bowl in October. And Lincoln, Coach Riley, he actually benches Spencer in the first half of that game, puts him back in there in the second half. We go on and win that game, I think, in 4 overtimes. Oklahoma doesn't lose a game the rest of the year. We end up winning the Big 12 championship against Iowa State. We win the Cotton Bowl against Florida. Now, at that time, I'm already here because I got hired in between at Carolina. But I just saw how Spencer dealt with adversity then, didn't let it affect him, and what he did after that. And then whatever happened at Oklahoma last season, I don't know, but I just know the Spencer that I was around. He's the kind of guy you want leading your team, and he's a great young man. He's a smart player. That has really worked hard since he got here in January to become a member of this team. And I think he's taken a step from a leadership standpoint this summer as well. Excited to see what he's going to do this year for us.
Well, congrats on all the success in year 1. Obviously, a lot of work to do. We really appreciate your time for being so gracious. Thank you, sir. We appreciate it.
No, I appreciate you guys. Keep up the great work.
That was Shane Beamer, South Carolina head football coach, year number 2. Over-exceeded every expectation in year number 1. 6-6, they get to a bowl game, of course. 7 starters back on offense, 7 starters back on defense. Spencer Rattler returning. I thought one of the phrases he used there was interesting. He said, he said his father taught him this, of course, great Frank Beamer. Work every day for the crisis, which is just, planning for the worst possible scenario, which I think is pretty normal in leadership roles.
Yeah.
But I thought that was interesting. And then your question about what advantages did he have by not having experience, which is a weird question, but I think it's an important one. And we'll get into what our expectations are for South Carolina here in this process. But I just wanted to point out, I think he kind of said there's no real path to get from point A to point B to become a head coach. I'm glad I did what I did and how I got there. I do see the value of
touching every part of the game.
Yeah. Yes. 100%. And if you're in the weeds, play caller, right? You're just a nerdy X's and O's offensive or defensive guru, and all you do is scheme stuff all night. You're like Spurrier, right? Mm-hmm. You didn't want to recruit. Does that prepare you to run a modern 2022 college football SEC program? Because to me, they're 2 wildly different skill sets, right? And I think Shane Beamer has a lot of skills that allow him to be a great CEO and recruiter. He just skipped over the part where he needed to call plays.
I mean, it's rare. It's like a mad scientist trying to be president. Just doesn't. Maybe president is a great example.
No,
but it's you get it.
No,
it's
there's certain skills
you don't have to be both.
Yeah, the guy flying the plane doesn't need to be the general of the Army.
Exactly.
Or Navy.
It almost works.
You know what I mean.
But you don't have to. And I think he realizes, and he is again, such a relationship guy. In fact, my favorite part of that whole interview was when, well, not because of my question, just his answer.
It was your question.
It was like, how far does your relationship extend with your players beyond just being a coach? And he said, infinitely.
Yeah, right.
As far as it needs to go, I can be whatever. And I think that definitely applies to everybody that he has around him, which is he respects the role that he plays and he wildly respects the staff that he has around him. And he's able to like let go just a little bit more.
So my number one question for South Carolina going into year number 2, I have said this on this show and many other places. I don't know how real the 6-6 was. They got, I don't want to say lucky because you always have to be a little lucky in football no matter what. Like no matter if you're great or terrible, you need to be lucky to win. My question is, clearly there was adversity there, right? Like he talked about Spencer Rattler's adversity at Oklahoma, and he knows the kind of player he was. They dealt with some adversity last year with the quarterback situation and the lack of depth and a first-year coach and blah, 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 blah. My question is, all that connected tissue he's talking about, the closeness, the stickiness of the locker room and the culture and all that stuff, how sustainable is that long-term? Or did they just catch it and it just like fixed a bunch of problems right away? Like the same question with Josh Heupel, right? Like
you mean the like locker room culture, like the culture of the team?
Yeah, how long can that sustain you to success without, like Josh Heupel, the foundation is great, the stickiness is good. How far can that take you before you have to have better players and have a better quarterback and have a better defensive line and have a better coordinator and just to like compete at a higher level?
I think it can keep moving with you the whole time. I don't think there's really like a diminishing marginal returns on that because No,
I don't think so either, but you have to also add in the other ingredients.
You do have to, but also it allows you, it also, like even just the trust factor of like, amongst the defensive line or amongst the offensive line, like trust grants you flexibility in a game to be able to push a little bit outside of yourself schematically.
Okay.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you.
So I think it can still, I know what you're saying. At some point you have to have better players, but also if you bring a recruit on a visit and these guys are literal brothers and obsessed with each other, it does help.
And he was a phenomenal recruiter at South Carolina. That's why they hired him. And I thought his answer was interesting when I said, what's missing? Because we've talked about this with Josh Kendall in a previous episode about why South Carolina can't figure it out. Like, why can't they figure it out? They've got they're lacking alignment, right? From the state legislative office down to the booster and through the coach. They don't have alignment. They haven't gotten the name, image, and likeness thing figured out. They've got all the resources and money, right? But they've got all they are 90,000 strong at their games.
Yeah, they're
for
on
nothing.
Paper. Yeah, no, I know.
Why? And why isn't it working? You've got the resources, you've got the geography. Why isn't it working? And I asked him, and he said, "We just got to bring in better players." Like that's what he said. He's like, "We got to keep adding better players." And I know it sounds like a cliche answer for Tennessee, Josh Heupel, and Shane Beamer here. It's going to happen. Billy Napier is going to face the same thing at Florida. What Clark Lea's dealing with this, like. At some point, all that culture is great. You got to turn it into talent. And South Carolina is even weirder, though, because they've had all this stuff forever, and they haven't ever figured it out. Like, they've been to Atlanta one time. So
it is like a wonder of the world. But
I love all these ball coaches that are hired, Stoops and Pittman and Beamer. I want to Heupel's the same way. They're just ball coaches. There's guys that build community. What's the upside for all those guys? They're all good right now. And they all overachieved right away, right? Mm-hmm. Stoops is the only one that's done it long term.
Yeah.
So we got to. I'm just.
And he's going to hopefully he'll keep his staff around, and then they'll have players stick it out the full 3-4 years. Have guys back on the NFL level, and then it'll just repeat itself. Hopefully.
All right.
At least they finish the season strong.
Anything else? Listen. If they get to a bowl game again, I think South Carolina fans should be ecstatic. For
sure. And the thing is, that's the difference about South Carolina and Tennessee. I think South Carolina will appreciate it more.
100%. Yes. I think they should. They had longer. They had a further. Crazy to think about that since Pruitt was so bad at Tennessee, but they might have had further to go. Also, Josh Heupel was an established head coach. He'd been a head coach for 3 or 4 years at Central Florida. He comes in with a lot of experience in that role. Shane Beamer has to learn on the fly to some degree how to be a head coach for the first time. So there's a lot. There's just a lot of moving parts at South Carolina. I find it to be one of the most interesting programs in all of college football. You're in state with Clemson, you're in the same division as Georgia and Florida and Tennessee, but you got elite recruits in every direction. Mm-hmm. You have 89,000 hanging out with those trains outside the stadium, just killer environment.
It's fun. It's one of my favorite game day experiences in the SEC. Now, hands down.
We can have a talk about what you're doing to your smoked meats, okay? And I'm not going to tell you what Shane Beamer
Braden
told
gets
me.
real heated about certain kinds
I'm
of
not
meat.
going to tell you about what Shane Beamer told me off the air, okay? I'm not going to tell you what he said. But what the fuck are you doing with mustard down there, South Carolina, okay?
Shots fired.
Enough with the mustard, all right? Leave the smoked meats alone. Okay. That about does it for us on the show today. Special thanks to Shane Beamer for joining us and hanging out.
Yeah, he was great.
Make sure you go to where and subscribe to what?
YouTube, subscribe to the 440 YouTube channel. It will not blow up your inbox or anything like that. It'll just show you when we put out videos, and we work hard on them. So,
And they don't, it won't blow you up. It's like a couple times a week, maybe.
Yeah.
A couple times a week. You'll get some good content, no empty calories, nutritional content only.
Yeah.
At the 440 Sports YouTube page. So check that out. Fringe Element is brought to you by
Jasper's. You got it this time. Go ahead.
Jasper's, the next evolution of the sports bar with free parking, the greatest food ever invented in the history of mankind.
There it is.
13 locations across the Southeast, Amerigo, Alabama, Mississippi, Memphis, Tennessee.
Yep.
All across the Southeast. That's
Lots
all
in
across the
Nashville.
Southeast, right?
Yeah.
That counts. Lots in Nashville, but all over the place too. Flowood, Ridgeland, Huntsville, Birmingham, Memphis, you name it. They're there, so go check them out. Go to Jasper's. Erin, where can people follow you?
Erin_Dugan on Instagram and the
Magazine's
Erin
back.
Dugan on Twitter. And you can
Yep, that's
follow
right.
the Cast Collect. Well,
Oh, yeah.
yeah. If you want to rent studio or event venue space in Nashville, podcasting, small events, we can do speaker series, we can do bridal showers.
Speaker series?
Yeah, like small speaker series events. You could do a small rehearsal dinner here.
What would you be a speaker on if you were going to be a speaker in your own series?
Toxic masculinity. Do you have any more questions?
No, I do
Okay.
not. Hashtag girl dad. My name is Braden Gall. You can follow me on Twitter at Braden Gall at 440 Sports. Rate, review, subscribe, share the show. Go to the Twitter account, go to the YouTube page, all that great stuff. Special thanks, of course, to Jasper's and to Shane Beamer. For Erin Dugan, my name is Braden Gall. Thank you guys for listening and watching. This has been Fringe Element on the 440 Sports Network.
Peace.